Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Good afternoon, everyone. Teacher is away today, so he's asked me to conduct today's service. So before we get started, we'll go ahead and actually sit for meditation for about 10 minutes like we used to do. So we'll go ahead and do that. Shakyamuni Buddha. So since I had only about 30 minutes to prepare what I wanted to speak about today, we're going to go on a whim here. So this morning we had a special service ceremony for a few of our Vietnamese members. So they took the 3 Refuge and the 5 Precepts this morning. So I thought I would talk about the 3 Refuge and what that actually means, and how as Buddhists we should approach this concept of faith and why we have faith in the 3 Refuge. So the 3 Refuge, also known as the 3 jewels or the triple gem, or Triratna, Triyaya, the 3 jewels. So the 3 jewels, or the 3 Refuge, is the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, right? It is the foundation of Buddhist teaching. It's foundation of the things that we chant, right? Something, if we chant anything, any day, every day, it would be to chant the 3 Refuge, or the triple jewel chant. I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, and I take refuge in the Sangha. So what is the 3 jewels? Why are the 3 jewels important? Why do we recite the 3 jewels? Why do we have faith or take faith in the 3 jewels? So first is the Buddha, okay? As we know, the historical Buddha Shakyamuni, or Gautama Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, is a historical Buddha who lived some 2600 centuries ago. And he is the founder of our belief system here, right? Of this religion, if you want to call it a religion, or this way of life, or this path. He is the person, right, that gave us these teachings. And so we take refuge in him, not in a sense where we are worshiping the Buddha or approaching him as some godlike person, because the Buddha was not a god, he was simply a person like any of us who found this way to escape this life of suffering that we are in, and escape the realms of rebirth that we go through, samsara. So we take refuge in him, and we take refuge in his Dharma, his teachings, the doctrines, the scriptures, the instructions that he gave to his students and his disciples, and that has been passed down for the past 2,600 years. And we take refuge in the Sangha, the community of practitioners. In Theravada Buddhism, the Sangha strictly just means the community of monastics, whereas in Mahayana, our school of thought, our school of practice, we believe in Sangha as being the whole community of practitioners. So that means lay people and monastics. And in some specific traditions, they reverse the order of the 3 jewels. So it's the Sangha, Dharma, and Buddha, seeing that the Sangha is superior in importance than the Buddha, right? Because the Buddha is, he's our central figure, right? It's the first thing you see when you walk into a Buddhist temple. So, but at the same time, he's not there to worship, right? We're not worshiping him. We're not bowing down to him. Even though we bow down during our services, we're not bowing necessarily to the Buddha, right? We're bowing down to our own Buddha nature, to our own Buddha-ness that we have within ourselves, right? So we are showing a sort of humble approach and showing our gratitude and thanks to the Buddha and to those that are here to help us with our teachings and with our practice. So the Sangha, to many schools of thought and traditions, is pretty important. And I think in Mahayana in general, especially in the West, where even though Buddhism is thriving and it's growing in its own way, it is kind of unfortunate that it's thriving in bigger areas. Like, California is probably the only state that has literally thousands of temples, right? So any state or any city you go in California, there's going to be at least a handful of temples, right? So you have ample of sources and suppliers to go to get your Buddhism fix. But in some other states, Texas has quite a few temples as well, but it is mostly in the bigger cities. So Houston and Dallas have quite a few dozen. In San Antonio, we only have a handful, about 4 or 5. And so even though with that availability of having temples there, the next issue is there even services for English-speaking people, or for the Americans, or for people who don't speak the respected language of that temple? So as far as I'm aware, our temple is the only actual temple that has English services and English ceremonies and chanting, right? We have a few Dharma centers and meditation centers that have American teachers and students, but they're not considered a temple, right? They don't have a monastic community. So fortunately for us, our temple here is, hopefully on the top of the list of people who want to learn Buddhism in San Antonio. But anyway, so when we take refuge in the 3 jewels, right, there is this sort of faith that we have to give to the 3 jewels. We have to give a little faith to the Buddha, to the Dharma, and to the Sangha. And I think for a lot of people who come to Buddhism that didn't grow up with Buddhism are seeking something that's more appealing to them, more suited to what they want to believe or they think they believe in, right? So growing up for me, and I know for Leon, right, we had this sense of this religion that I grew up with is not for me, right? We have this lack of faith in our religion that we were born into. And this lack of faith for many people is what drives them away from their born with religion to seek other faith-based religions or spiritual practices. But the problem there is, at least for me, when I was growing up until high school, I attended a mostly religious school. Half our classes were religion classes and the other half were actual curriculum classes, right? And unfortunately for my parents, my parents were always called on by the principal's office because I'm always questioning these teachers on these religion classes. And if anyone grew up in a religious school, right, they know not to ask questions to their teachers, because the teachers are usually, nuns and priests, right? So sometimes when you're questioning them, you're questioning their authority, and that is can be a big no-no in churches, right? Like you don't dare to question the high priest or the ministers or anything like that, right? We're giving faith. Our faith is based on their authority and their connection to God or to whomever. And so when we question that and our questions get pushed back or denied or just kind of blown over, then we're like, well, what am I doing here, right? Why am I being forced to come to church if I don't believe in what it's being preached? So that's really probably, as far as I have experienced through with people, is that's a big part of them seeking other paths of spirituality, right? Whether it's a different form of Christianity or a whole different religion or just a spiritual practice, right? Like Buddhism can be. That lack of faith that they have within their own religion or their own upbringing is what kind of pushes them away. And when that faith is being questioned, right, and it's not being answered either a lot of times would be like, leave it up to faith, right? That's the answer we'd get. Leave it up to faith. Have faith in God. Have faith in church. Have faith in the priest, etc., etc. But because we don't see proof of that faith, we're like, well, maybe you're just BSing me here, right? You're assuming that some higher, being is going to come in and save you, or, you're going to heaven or hell when you die. So it's all faith-based without that concrete proof, right? And as our world ages and as we go through the generations and we have, religion starts to kind of dwindle down a little bit, right? As technology advances, as entertainment advances, right? We tend to leave religion behind, right? It's kind of like on collecting dust on the bookshelf. And so when we are having that lack of faith in religion, we kind of just keep it there, then it's not so much of a big deal, right? Maybe we go to religion when something catastrophic happens, right? Or maybe we go to religion when someone dies, or when we're having some sort of personal issue, right? But that still doesn't develop that sense of oneness with God or with Jesus or to whomever you are praying to or believing in, right? There's still that disconnect that you may have. Even with Buddhism, there still can be that disconnect. And the problem and the reason why we have that disconnect is because our faith is not being questioned, right? The one thing that kind of sold me in a way with Buddhism is you can question your faith. You can, not only can you, it's encouraged that you question your faith. If you have doubts, good. Those are, good doubts to have. Question your doubts, right? Discriminate your doubts. Really dig deep and see why Buddhism does or does not work for you. And that's one thing that the Buddha taught his disciples is if you are questioning what I'm teaching you or you don't believe in it, go practice it, go meditate on it, go contemplate on it, do it for yourself. If it works, great, it works. If it doesn't work, then move on to something else, right? He did not preach and say, my word is the only word, my word is the true word, my word is what's going to free you. He did not say that. He said, listen, this is what I did to escape from suffering. This is what I did to attain enlightenment. You can do it too. Here are the instructions. Here are the steps, right? And so it's not something that, hey, if you just pray to me, you will become enlightened or you'll go to paradise or heaven or hell after you die, right? It's not that. It's practice, right? And teacher, almost every single service, right, he emphasizes practice and practice and practice. Because if you don't practice, then you're just your faith is blind. You have blind faith. You're just assuming goodness is going to happen to you because you're practicing Buddhism, right? You're going to assume there's going to be peace of mind because you had this idea that Buddhism is all peaceful and happy, and you see the monks always meditating and at peace and serene, and it's almost never 100% accurate, right? Even as monks and nuns and monastics, right, we are still human beings, so we still have anger, right? We still have discrimination and bias. But the differences between true Buddhist practitioners and non-Buddhist practitioners is when we are angry, we know what to do with it. We know how to handle our anger. We know how to approach our anger. We know how to subdue and conquer that anger versus someone who doesn't have the instructions of how to work their anger or how to deal with it. They're just going to stay angry and be angry, have this resentment, this build up over time, right? So we want to avoid that. So the Buddha told us, go meditate on what I just taught you, right? There's a story of one, during the Buddha's time, of a merchant who gave alms to the Buddha and his disciples one day when they were out doing alms round. And he would see the monks every day and see how they're just at peace and serene. They eat once a day. They go back to their monastery. They listen to the Dharma teachings from the Buddha. They meditate and they're just at peace, right? So this was the idea of this merchant who's like, maybe if I become a monk, I'll be at peace. I'll be serene and peaceful because that's what I see, right? So the monk one day asked the Buddha if he could accept him as his disciple, and the Buddha said yes. So he shaved his head, he got robes, he became a monk. But this monk was also basing his idea of how serene and meditative these monks are based on only what he saw. So he had faith that if I just become a monk, I'm automatically going to be free of suffering. I'm automatically going to be rid of all this anger and desire that I have, right? This was his own faith. And so the monk, after a while, became angry because he wasn't feeling serene and peaceful and happy as the other monks should be. So seeing his frustration, the Buddha went up to him and asked him what was wrong. He's like, and the merchant told him, I thought by becoming a monk I'd be at peace, I'd be serene like your senior disciples. And the Buddha told him, well, what are you doing to accomplish this state of mind of peacefulness and calmness that you see in the other monks? He's like, I don't know. I just sit and I sleep and I eat one time a day. And the Buddha's like, I'm sorry, is our whole organization just about sitting and eating and sleeping every day? It's like, no, you're not doing. You're basing your monastic life on what you see. You're not basing on what you actually should be doing, right? So monastic life isn't just meditating all day and chanting and giving Dharma talks and whatnot. It's an actual practice that we have to do, right? We have to actually put in some effort to accomplish this serene and peacefulness that we see in the monks and nuns. So practice is pretty important, and the teacher emphasizes it quite a bit, because you can't just read a book or go to the temple and listen to Dharma talks and just automatically feel like your issues and problems are gone, right? You can't read your way out of anger. You can't read your way out of thinking bad thoughts or having bad desires and whatnot. You actually have to put in the effort to work toward it. And so that's, for me, one of the fruits of Buddhism is being able to say, I have faith in being able to escape my suffering, but my faith is based on the actual practice that I'm doing, right? So, and what that does is that then becomes verified faith, because now you have blind faith in saying, maybe meditation will help me with my anxiety, maybe meditation will help me with my anger, maybe meditation will help me become more compassionate or loving towards people, right? That is your that's your curious faith or your blind faith. But then when you actually meditate on those things and contemplate those teachings, and you see the fruits of your accomplishment, of your practice, then that faith, that blind faith you had, has become verified. You've verified yourself that meditating on compassion does make me more compassionate, or meditating on loving kindness, on metta, does allow me to feel a little bit more at ease with others, right? I'm not as angry, or at least instantaneously angry with certain people or certain situations right away. So when you actually practice what you are reading or what you hear from Dharma talks or what you want to accomplish in your practice, right, and you actually work toward it, then that curiosity that you had for it or that blind faith that you had for it is now verified, because you're like, oh, I see it worked for me. Doing this or meditating on this worked for me. I see the truth in the teaching. I see the wisdom that I've been able to attain because of my practice. And so when that happens, we have verified faith, then we become stronger in our practice, right? I was telling one of our students, Christopher Treeman, that he was asking about nirvana, and I was explaining to him that we can all have bits of in nirvana every once in a while, right? Like pieces of enlightenment that come and go, right? That aha moment, right? So maybe you're reading something, you're studying a sutra, you're studying some teaching, and something just clicks, and you're like, that makes so much sense. That is an aha moment. That is a form of enlightenment, right? It's very subtle, it's very small, and it doesn't seem like a big deal, right? Because when we read about enlightenment or nirvana, we imagine this fireworks show that happens in the background as it happens, right? But it's really not that extravagant. It's those subtle moments of clarity that come when we realize the truth in something. And so, it can happen when we're reading something and that aha moment happens. It can come to us during meditation, during a Dharma talk, during washing dishes or cleaning our car. Like any moment of clarity in something that you've been thinking about or contemplating, that is a form of enlightenment, right? Nirvana is having that little piece of enlightenment be permanent, right? When we have that aha moment maybe lasts for a few seconds, a few minutes, maybe an hour or two, or a day or two, right? And then it kind of disappears and you go back to your normal life, right? But true nirvana, true enlightenment is having that aha moment consistently throughout the rest of your life. And so that's why we practice constantly. That's why we are always meditating, we're always chanting, so that we can get those longer periods of aha moments. So when we're practicing, right, and if you have doubt about a teaching, and I think I mentioned this last week, because last week we chanted the Medicine Buddha Sutra, and the Medicine Buddha Sutra is an interesting read. It's an interesting sutra, right, because it gives the vows that Medicine Buddha gave while he was a bodhisattva, and vowed that when he became a Buddha, that these vows would be fulfilled. And some of these vows, I think it's vow number 9 or 10, saying that if a woman wishes to become a male to attain enlightenment, then she should, follow Medicine Buddha's teachings and practice so that she can be reborn as a male in a male body. So as educated Westerners, right, we're going to be like, oh, that's so sexist, right? That's discriminatory. And nowadays, that is 100% is what everyone's going to say. But you also have to think about the time and place of when the sutra was actually taught and written down, right? In a time and place where women were not even considered second class. They weren't even relevant to any sort of hierarchical system or importance in community or civilization whatsoever. They were just there to make you children and cook you food and clean the house, right? That's the mindset back then was. And so in early Buddhism, after the Buddha's death, there were many different schools of Buddhism that kind of emerged, right? And some of the earlier ones, the orthodox teachings, did emphasize that only men can attain enlightenment in a man's body, because a female's body had too many obstructions that may deter them from attaining enlightenment. And they mostly just meant the things that happen within a woman's body, being pregnant or menstruating, all these other things that may hinder their practice. And so that was the idea of teaching. Hey, if you want to get out of those things that can happen or will happen to your body, so they're not in the way, then pray to be reborn as a man in your next life. But later schools, and especially during Mahayana, the emergence of Mahayana teachings, that attitude and that mindset changed, where it was like, no, You don't have to wait and be reborn again to find enlightenment or attain enlightenment. You can do it now. It may be harder, it may be more difficult, but you can still attain it, right? And they emphasize that anybody can attain enlightenment, not just the monastics, as it was taught in the Orthodox traditions. But as I was trying to explain last week was, the Medicine Buddhist Sutra, again, it's the time and place of where it was, and we have to take that into consideration because it doesn't fit our society and culture now, where we view, at least most people view everyone, both men and women, as equal, right? They have equal status, equal roles. So that sutra is a little bit off-putting sometimes. But if we are truly practicing Buddhism and we truly study the teachings and the sutras, then when we read something like that, and there's other sutras like that, but that's probably one of the most prominent ones. But when we read something like that, we don't automatically make the assumption or categorize this as sexist or discriminatory, right? Because we now know as deep practitioners that this is a time and place kind of thing, and this is why it was said in the first place, right? So we shouldn't be taking things like that personally, like some people may at the first time reading it or chanting it. It's off-putting, so I try to avoid that sutra when there's new people in attendance, because it can be a little uncomfortable sometimes. Anyway, I'm off topic as usual. So the 3 jewels, the 3 refuge. I just need to emphasize that, especially for those that come to the temple for the first time, right? There's so many people that come and go, so many people that are so excited to learn Buddhism and so excited to just jump into the teachings and start meditating and start reading all these big texts and sutras, and just assume automatically after a few sessions or a few reads they're just going to become a better person, right? Unfortunately, it's not a switch that we can just switch on and off. I'm a good person today, I'm a bad person tomorrow, I'm a good person today, I'm a bad person tomorrow. It's something that is ingrained in our mind, right? We have to think about all the things that we've gone through and have done throughout all our lives, right? All the bad habits that we've created over the years, right? All the bad thinking, all the bad assumptions and biases and discriminations that we have, all these are ingrained deep in our consciousness. So we can't just weed them out by reading one book or coming to the temple a few times, right? It's something that we have to diligently, actively meditate on and contemplate on, and then slowly weed them out. But a lot of people come and make that assumption that let me just meditate, let me bow down, let me pray, and maybe all of a sudden I'm going to become a better person. And when that doesn't happen, then we're like, well, Buddhism doesn't work for me, let me go to the next religion, right? So they're just religion hopping from one religion to another. And we see that quite often, unfortunately, because people don't give time to the practice, right? They assume they can just go to like a church, ask for forgiveness, ask for repentance from the priest, and all of a sudden all their sins are dissolved and they're a good person again, right? Within like 10 minutes, right? They don't have to do anything. They just sit there and ask for forgiveness, and they're forgiven, and then they can go back to being a bad person, do bad things, and just go ask for forgiveness again, and just they're just resetting and restarting the whole thing over and over again, right? So that's the mindset that people have. So when they come to Buddhism or come to the temple and meditate and it doesn't work for them, they're like, well, this doesn't work, let me go somewhere else. It doesn't work because we're not actually putting in the effort to work toward it, right? It's called a practice for a reason. You have to actually do the work, right? That's why it's called practice. You can't just become a guitar player overnight or by watching one YouTube video and all of a sudden you're the next rock star, right? It takes time and effort and diligence in learning the instrument to actually even become a decent player. So just like that, we have to put in that mindset that we have to work toward becoming a better person, or coming to the realization that our efforts within our practice will eventually be fruitful. And so when we have faith, we don't have just faith in the teachings and hope that they work for us, but we also have that faith within ourselves, because it's us that are making all the decisions. It's us that is putting the effort, the time, the diligence, the practice into becoming a better person. So you can have faith in Buddhism and the teachings all you want, but if you yourself do not put in that practice and that time, then you're just wasting time for yourself. You're wasting time for everybody else that's trying to help you or teach you. So our faith-based practice is something that may first start out as blind faith or curiosity, and then hopefully eventually become that verified faith. And that verified faith is what will strengthen our resolve in practicing. And so I believe when people continuously come back to services or to the temple and to practice, that they've had glimpses of that verified faith, which is why you're coming back, right? Otherwise, if it wasn't working for you or whatever, then you would never be coming back. You just come once or twice and then just vanish the thin air, right? So hopefully as people do come back and, continuously practice with us, with the Sangha, that their faith is becoming verified little by little. And it could be little things, right? Don't expect big aha moments, fireworks, people cheering for you in the background type of thing. It's very subtle. And we meditate because we meditate with concentration and with focus so that we can actually be aware of those subtle aha moments. Because sometimes they're so small that if you're not paying attention hard enough, you're going to miss it, right? And if you miss so many of them, then you're just going to doubt your whole practice and your whole belief in what you're doing. So that's why we constantly emphasize mindfulness and meditation, being aware of what you're doing, what you're thinking, what you're saying, because those mini aha moments can happen and it could you're unfazed by it. So we want to be fazed, we want to be aware, and we do that by continuously practicing. Okay, I'm going to stop now. I've over-talked, as usual. Any questions, concerns, emotional outbursts that I don't want to hear? Okay, so we'll go ahead and chant from the mirror and go into chanting. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. For any positive karmic action we have accumulated here today, we wish to transfer merit to all sentient beings and wish them full enlightenment. So we'll just be doing a general service today. Body, speech, and mind in perfect oneness, I send my heart along with the sound of the bell. May the birds awaken from forgetfulness and transcend all anxiety and sorrow. Listen, listen, this wonderful sound brings me back to my true home. In gratitude we offer this incense to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas throughout space, and may it be fragrant as earth herself, reflecting our careful efforts, our whole heart, mindfulness, and the fruit of understanding slowly ripening. May we and all beings be companions of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. May we awaken from forgetfulness and realize our true home. The incense in the censer now is burning, all the Dharma realm in every place, auspicious clouds appearing, our sincere intention thus fulfilling, as all Buddhas now show their perfect body. Homage to the incense cloud canopy, Bodhisattva and great Bodhisattvas. Homage to the eternally abiding Buddhas, the supreme Dharma and sagely Sangha throughout the Dharma realm and the realm of empties, and 3 periods of time. Homage to the fundamental teacher Shakyamuni Buddha, Maitreya, honored future Buddha, Manjushri, great wisdom Bodhisattva, universal great conduct Bodhisattva, all Dharma guarding Deva Bodhisattvas, and the glorious mountain assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Homage to Amitabha Buddha in the land of ultimate Avalokiteshvara, great compassion Bodhisattva, great strength Bodhisattva, earth store, great vow Bodhisattva, and the assembly of great pure sea like Bodhisattva. shed light on the five skandhas and found them equally empty. After this penetration, he overcame ill-beingness and Shariput. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form, form is not other than emptiness, emptiness is not other. The same is true with feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and of love. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community that lives in harmony and awareness. Dwelling in the refuge of Buddha, I clearly see the path of light and beauty, and dwelling in the refuge of Dharma, I learn to open many doors on the path of transformation. Dwelling in the refuge of Sangha, shining light that supports me, keeping my practice free of obstruction. Taking refuge in the Buddha, in myself I aspire to help all people recognize own awakened nature, realizing the mind of love, taking refuge in the Dharma. In myself I aspire to help all people fully master the ways of practice and walk together on the path of liberation, taking refuge in the Sangha. In myself I aspire to help all people build fourfold communities to embrace all beings and support their transformation. Reciting the sutras, practicing the way of awareness gives rise to benefits without limits. We vow to share the fruits with all beings. We vow to offer tribute to parents, teachers, friends, and numerous beings who give guidance and support along the path. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Also want to announce that on April 17th, this is Saturday, at 8 a.m. we will have our day of mindful working, our volunteer day. So if anyone is available and interested, please join us on April 17th for our volunteer day, where we will be working mostly on outside landscaping. Thank you. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha.